It was supposed to be a quick, laugh-a-light moment during the school's talent rehearsal. The teachers, trying to keep things moving, handed an old violin to a woman standing quietly near the back of the auditorium. She wasn't a performer or a parent of any of the students, just a helper brought in to organize props and hand out snacks. Her clothes were plain, her voice soft, and no one expected anything more than awkward noise. "Come on," one of the music teachers joked, nudging her forward. "Show us what you've got." The other staff chuckled. Some students in the front row smirked, already preparing to cringe or cover their ears. The woman gave a nervous smile, hesitated, then gently took the violin. Her hands moved slowly at first, brushing dust from the strings, checking the bow. Most assumed she didn't even know how to hold it properly. But then she took a breath and lifted the instrument to her shoulder. What happened in the next few seconds changed everything. The laughter stopped. The room fell silent. Even the music teacher who handed her the violin looked stunned. It wasn't just that she could play it, it was how she played. There was emotion in every note, pain and beauty stitched into every movement of the bow, and none of them could explain how someone so unassuming could sound like that. No one knew her story. No one asked, till now, because the truth behind. Her music was something none of them were ready to hear. The last note echoed through the auditorium, hanging in the air like a secret just revealed. No one clapped, not because they weren't impressed, but because they were too stunned to move. The woman slowly lowered the violin, her expression calm, almost distant, like she had gone somewhere else while playing. One of the teachers finally cleared his throat, trying to break the silence. Where did you learn to do that?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she carefully handed the violin back and quietly said, "It's been a long time." Whispers started, spreading among the students. "Who is she? Did you see her hands?" That didn't sound like a beginner. The school's music teacher, Mr. Lewis, who had spent years teaching and training young performers, stood frozen. He had seen prodigies, but this felt different. This wasn't just skill, it was something deeper, emotional, lived. No one seemed to know her full name. She had been helping out in the school part-time for only a few weeks, mostly cleaning up after events or helping students backstage. Most staff barely noticed her. But now they couldn't look away. One teacher leaned toward Mr. Lewis and whispered, "Should we ask her to perform at the spring concert?" He didn't answer. His eyes were locked on her, his mind racing through old memories. Something about her playing it stirred something, a familiarity he couldn't explain. And as she quietly turned to leave the stage, Mr. Lewis suddenly remembered where he'd heard that melody before. Mr. Lewis sat alone in the empty auditorium after the others had left, the melody still echoing in his mind. He wasn't just impressed, he was haunted. That song, it wasn't something a beginner would know. It wasn't even in any standard sheet music. It was an original composition, one he remembered from years ago. A competition in another city. A young girl with trembling hands had performed Itro, emotional, unforgettable. But she had vanished before the judges could speak with her. No name, no school, just a disappearing act that left everyone wondering who she was. And now, here she was again. Meanwhile, word spread through the school. Students who once ignored her now stared in the hallways. A few curious parents began asking questions. One staff member, Mrs. Patel, dug through the volunteer records and found almost nothing. No social media, no personal history, just a phone number and a first name, Alina. Tension was growing fast. Some teachers worried she had tricked them. Somehow, why would someone like that hide her talent? One asked. Others started speculating she might have been famous once. Maybe she quit because of some scandal. Maybe she lost someone. Maybe the music was all she had left. Alina, however, returned to her duties like nothing had happened. She swept floors, organized music stands, and stayed quiet. But Mr. Lewis wasn't ready to let it go. He needed to know why she walked away from music, and why she was suddenly back. The next few days at the school felt different. Everywhere Alina went, people watched her, some with admiration, others with suspicion. Students whispered in corners. Teachers paused mid-sentence when she passed by. Still, she said nothing. She just kept to her work, folding chairs, fixing tangled cords, tidying music rooms. But no one could stop thinking about that moment on stage. Mr. Lewis couldn't let it go. That melody haunted him. He pulled out old recordings, digging through competition archives, trying to match the notes. Late one night, he found a 10-old video labeled * unnamed violinist, regional showcase. The sound was exactly the same. Her face was younger, her expression the same, focused, lost in the music. He froze when he saw who was sitting in the front row of the judges' panel in that video. It was him. And he remembered now, after that performance, the girl had disappeared before they could announce the winner. All that remained was the music, and a quiet name whispered backstage. Alina. The spring concert was days away. Students were rehearsing, the program being finalized. That's when Principal Harris approached Mr. Lewis. People are asking about her. Should we invite her to play officially? Mr. Lewis hesitated. She's not just a volunteer, he said quietly. She's a story we all forgot. That night, Alina found a folded note in the storage room. It read, *, please play your piece at the spring concert. The students need to hear it. So do I, *. She stared at it for a long time. Then she walked out into the dark auditorium and picked up the violin. Alina stood alone on the stage, violin in hand, staring out at the empty rows. She ran the bow across the strings, testing the sound, but her hands trembled. She hadn't played in front of a real audience since the day. Everything changed. The note from Mr. Lewis stirred something deep, something she had buried. She took a breath and began to play slowly, at first letting the familiar melody guide her. But then, just as the notes started to flow, the auditorium door creaked open. A woman stepped inside, dressed in a dark coat, her face partially hidden. Alina froze the moment she saw her. The bow slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. The woman walked closer, her voice low. "I never thought I'd find you here." It was her old teacher, Ms. Veru, the one who had trained her. Before she walked away from everything, years ago, Ms. Vieira had pushed her beyond limits, preparing her for a future in music competitions across the country. But when Alina's mother fell ill, she chose family over fame. Leaving the stage behind and disappearing without explanation, Ms. Vieira had searched for her ever since. But not for a reunion for answers. "You had a gift the world needed too. Here," Ms. Vieira said, "and you wasted it?" Her voice wasn't angry, it was heavy with disappointment. Alina looked down, torn between guilt and pride. She whispered, "Maybe the world didn't need my music as much as my mother needed me." But Ms. Vieira wasn't done. "Then why are you still playing?" Lena stood still, Ms. Vieira's question hanging in the air like a challenge. Her grip on the violin tightened. For years, she had told herself she was done with music, that it belonged to another life. But deep down, she knew the truth. She never stopped playing. In silence, at night, in empty rooms like this one. Music had always been her language when words failed, her escape when life was too heavy. Slowly, she looked up and met Ms. Vieira's eyes, because it's the only way I still feel connected to who I was. And to her, she said softly. Ms. Vieira's expression softened, the fire in her eyes dimming. She stepped closer and placed a hand on Alina's shoulder. "Then don't hide anymore. Play for yourself, not for me, not for them. Let them see what music really means. The night of the spring concert arrived. Parents, teachers, and students filled the auditorium. Rumors had spread that a special performance would close the show, but no one expected what came next. When Alina walked on stage with her violin, whispers filled the room. She stood alone, no lights, no grand introduction. But when she played, everything else disappeared. Her music wasn't perfect, but it was real. Every note carried years of love, loss, and silent strength. The audience was silent, moved beyond words, and as the last note faded, the lights flickered. In the front row, Mr. Lewis found an envelope left on his seat. Inside was a handwritten note. Asterisk, you were right to wait for her. She's your daughter. Asterisk, Mr. Lewis sat frozen, the envelope trembling in his hands. The note inside was short, but its impact was crushing. His eyes moved from the paper to the stage, where Alina was bowing quietly, unaware of what he had just discovered. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind, memories of a brief but painful chapter in his life. One he had always wondered about, but never dared to chase. Now the answer stood before him, not only as a gifted musician, but as his daughter. Backstage, Alina stepped off the stage, overwhelmed by the standing ovation. For a moment, she felt like herself again, not the helper, not the forgotten prodigy, but simply a woman doing what she loved. Ms. Vieira met her with a proud smile, while students rushed to hug her, their faces filled with admiration. Even teachers, who once mocked her, now looked on with respect. Some with regret. Mr. Lewis walked slowly toward her, holding the envelope in his hand. When Alina saw his face, something in her shifted.